SportsLit is co-founded and co-hosted by Neil Acharya and Nate Sager. Engineer and technical producer, Michael Ella. Executive producer, Neil Acharya. Welcome to SportsLit. I'm Neil Acharya.
And I am Nathan Sager.
Today, we welcome former NFL quarterback Erik Kramer to discuss his book, The Ultimate Comeback, Surviving a Suicide Attempt, Conquering Depression, and Living with a Purpose. It's written with William Croyle, and it was published on November 6th by Whitsett Avenue Publishing.
And that title makes some of the subjects for this episode fairly clear. Please keep in mind, if you or someone close to you is struggling with suicidal thoughts, you can call 988 anytime from anywhere in the U.S. and Canada and get professional assistance. And please know that you are loved and valued. Until the day before this recording, our guest was the only living person who had quarterbacked the Detroit Lions of the National Football League to a playoff win, and that Erik Kramer is here to share his inspirational story, as remarkable as it is, Neil.
Absolutely, Nate. We have done it. We've had guests who've played in the NHL, the NBA, MLB, but never an NFL player until now. However, The Ultimate Comeback is not really a book about football, but there is reason to celebrate, and that's because he is here. The Ultimate Comeback is a lot like standing next to someone at a bar. You strike up a conversation. You two don't really know each other, but you get talking. And once you hear this person's story, it's obvious they've been through a lot. You sit back and listen. You laugh a little sometimes because they can find a glimmer of irony in their most troubling moments. You might not have asked all the details, but you're willing to just sit back again and let them talk. What's most encouraging is at the end, you know that they will pull through, that they've pulled through, and that they will pull through. And that's Erik Kramer's story.
Yeah, Kramer has been open about how he attempted suicide and had a lengthy road to a full recovery. By all accounts, he is in good health, living in his native Southern California. And I think eager to sort of share his story and message with anyone else who gets visited by the black dog of depression, which we'll talk about, but we'll also want to talk about his days with Lions and Bears. Oh my, Neil.
The NFC Norris. Yes, who is Erik Kramer? He was an NFL quarterback who played 10 seasons from 1987 to 1999 with 4 teams. In 1991, he almost helmed Barry Sanders and the Detroit Lions to the Super Bowl, but came up 1 game short in the NFC Championship game to the Washington Redskins. He holds the single-season passing yards and touchdown record for the Chicago Bears. He set the mark in 1995, and guess what, Nate? It still stands.
I didn't even know the Bears kept passing records.
No, of course not. Just rushing and, of course, defensive stats. Remember, Nate, it was the Fridge who had a TD in Super Bowl 20, not Walter Payton. So
shameful.
So that is who Erik Kramer was. Who is he now? He's alive. And that's something, as we've kind of alluded to. Kramer describes his depression as coming on and off like a light switch. When it takes hold, it's there. And it's a case of let there be no light, if you will. And that light, the normal light you would have in your day-to-day life, almost went out on August 15th, 2015. But thankfully, it didn't. As the story goes, he checked in to the Good Night Inn. Again, irony not lost in the narrative written by William Croyle. And Kramer shot himself, but he didn't die. And that's how his book starts. And we learn how he got to that point and how he's able now to tell this ongoing story of his life. There's chronicles of his unstable upbringing with an overly competitive mother and a meddling father, and how he struggled with that, but later reconciled with both of them to varying degrees. You will learn how he was molded to be an athlete and he became an unrecruited high school QB that went on to be an undrafted college QB. Kramer from there went on to remarkably start for 4 NFL teams. And what makes it remarkable? He got his break after cold calling 28 of them.
Yeah, who needs an agent? Good thing they hadn't expanded yet either.
Sadly, the genetic markings of the mental health issues that began to surface for him during his NFL playing years transferred to his son, Griffin. And Griffin, unfortunately, died of a heroin overdose in 2011. And that's a massive theme that leads into basically the story of Erik and going to that hotel and trying to end his life. There's also a failed marriage. There's fraud and newfound love that may have always really been there. Mm-hmm. Nate, how does Erik's story resonate?
Well, I think first off, from the depression aspect, especially as it pertained to him, I guess in the 2010s, I guess it's how things accumulate. It's, if you get some shock events, as he did, in a short succession, that can really drag you down. And it's not just, like the light going out. The other analogy that Erik Kramer has used when talking about depression, I heard him say this when he was with Tyler Dunn on the Go Long podcast. He said it robs you of the aerial view. And that made me think, as a football nerd, of what they call the all-22 camera that shows what every player on the field. That's the one and football teams at every level use when they watch the game film. When you don't have that aerial view, you start to get a tunnel vision, or as they would say on a football broadcast, he's locked onto a receiver. It's ruining your capacity to see everything else around you and see that things aren't that bad, and also takes away your capacity to be what you need to be for other people in your life, other people who depend on you. You forget that there are people depending on you, and ultimately that's how depression hurts us all, not just the person going through it. So, speaking from my own personal experience.
And Nate, as a football player, how would you describe Erik Kramer?
Well, I mean, we could easily sit here and just spout off stats, but really, I like the fact that his career arc really has some trace similarities with the Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner. Obviously, Warner collected significantly more accolades and had more success. But we're talking about two different players who sort of came out of the football wilderness to be in the right place at the right time for an NFL team that was willing to try something different. And the Kurt Warner story, I think everyone knows that. I mean, it's been turned into an inspirational movie. He went from being the 29-year-old backup quarterback who had only played 2.5 minutes in the NFL to being the ringleader of the Rams' greatest show on turf offense. They come out of nowhere to seemingly win a Super Bowl in the 99-2000 season. He goes on to a Hall of Fame career. He's doing television. But the seeds for the Rams and the greatest show on turf, they had really been planted over the previous couple of decades in the NFL with other teams that had shucked convention and were on the cutting edge with making the NFL a passing league. And the Detroit Lions were one of those teams. 10 years or so before the Rams came along, the Lions were in dire enough straits to say, Mouse Davis's run and shoot offense, that's just crazy enough to work. Nobody runs the run and shoot now. But at the time, it was like almost as a front to traditional football thinking. We're going to, get rid of the tight end and the fullback, and we're going to line up with 4 wide receivers and 1 running back on every play. And instead of the pass receivers being like, hey, Biff, go down 10 yards and then cut in 4 yards, it's going to be, no, you're going to change your route based on the movements of the defensive players. Now everyone in the NFL runs this. They just don't run it in the pure form that Mouse Davis ran, because as with any radical concept, there's going to be limitations and it's going to need to be adapted. But the principles behind it were solid. Anyways, staying in the time when Erik Kramer came to the Detroit Lions, they were kind of like, there was a dismissiveness towards it, but he got an opportunity because they saw, here's a guy who is an adaptive athlete. He can make the quick decisions for this, new agey passing offense. And it was part of something that brought a lot of excitement to football fans in Detroit when he got an opportunity. And as you mentioned, led the Lions to an NFC Championship game performance after, decades of them being an also-ran. So he was really one of those quarterbacks in the 90s who helped people remember that that's how the position is played, and it helped take the NFL from being a very, it had gotten in some places it had become a very static game, but it evolved into one now that to a big degree is really basically the 1990s CFL, but with one fewer player. And Kramer, I mean, his story as a football player was he was a guy who just kept working, and he was there when, the starter went down and he got an opportunity to play. So, I think if you're watching and enjoying the game now, you have to thank the quarterbacks from his era who showed that you didn't have to be 6'4" and you didn't have to be the type of athlete where, to quote Bull Durham, the gods reached down and turned your right arm into a thunderbolt, because that's what teams always seem to be looking for, maybe 35, 40 years ago to quarterback, but that's not really what the position was all about. Dan Marino wasn't a legend because he was 6'4" and could throw so far. He was great because he had vision and he could get the ball out quickly. And he also just happened to be 6'4". It's so that, like I say, I definitely appreciate the athletes from that era and what they've done to make the game what it is today.
Yeah, absolutely, Nate. What you're saying basically describes what Patrick Mahomes can do right now perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or Jordan Love. I can remember people thinking, I guess it was just the idea that they had gotten in this thing, everyone, their athletes are going to be like the Terminator or whatever. I can remember overhearing conversation. The ideal NFL quarterback in the future, they'll all be between 6'4" and 6'7". And have you seen any 6'7" quarterbacks lately? I haven't. And Kramer, he was, like I say, an adaptive athlete. I think 6'1" and 200 pounds, which is average, modestly sized by NFL standards. But he had so many unique experiences and challenges growing up. I guess he was ready for anything that could be thrown at him, and we sort of find the ultimate case of adversity making you stronger, both in his early life and then in his life after football. Neil,
thank you, Nate. As always, you can buy this book and any of the others we've covered over 8 seasons. This is obviously time for a milestone for us, I guess. Our 8th season, first episode. And go to our website, click the Amazon link, www.sportslit.ca. You can listen to all our back episodes as well there. And we're very excited to start this season. So let's get right to it, shall we?
Welcome, Erik Kramer. Now, normally we're not overly topical, but we have to ask, what is the significance of seeing a Detroit Lions playoff win after so many years?
Well, you tell me. It's been 32, so to be specific. So I think the being there, watching it happen, excuse me, the city of Detroit, its fans, the organization, everybody associated is starved for not just relevance, but a winning team, which they've got during the regular season. Awesome. Now to carry it over into the playoffs was something special to witness.
And it was, of course, and it was tense all the way. And something that added to it was that it was such a nail biter. A 1-point game that went down to the final minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it started out great, and the Lions took possession, went down. Goff, I think, was perfect in terms of completion and attempts, and then obviously they scored and set the stage. They scored, I think, the first couple times they had the ball, and seems like the Rams were in catch-up mode the rest of the game. Obviously, the Rams stepped up in the second half, especially defensively, and kept them out of the end zone. But I think just Detroit, from start to finish, made just a lot of key plays, not only offensively, but defensively, getting some key stops as well.
Yeah, of course, we will now sort of segueing into the book, and I will say that even though I'm a fan of another NFC North team, the one that wears the purple jerseys with the horn on the helmet, I'm invested in seeing how far they go. Now, when I was listening to you with Tyler Dunn on the Go Long podcast, I think you said depression saps you of the aerial view of your life. I guess how much did working on this book make you reflect on how that illness can sort of lead to tunnel vision?
The book had nothing to do with it. It's the perception has been around forever. And so anyone who's experienced anything, that falls under the category of depression, it zaps you of any perspective, not just era perspective in general. And so my experience was that of eventually you end up looking, you don't look through anything. You're very, very focused on all the misperceptions that you tell yourself. So you don't really have anybody else's perspective but your own, and that is plummeting continually, daily, during the day and the next day, and so on.
And I know that something that, having been through that journey, that you're sort of trying to do now, move into some work with nonprofits and with helping younger children, I think, identify those feelings. What can you sort of tell us about your initiatives in those areas?
Well, this came out of a friend of mine who I'd gone to play football with in college. Lives about 4 hours from me, and he was struggling with some issues that for him didn't seem to go away. And it sounded an awful lot to me like depression. And so I got him in touch with a friend of mine who was a former therapist and was at the time. And so it just, because this friend of mine hadn't experienced anything like this, and we're the same age, and he was probably 50 at the time. 55, 52, 53, something like that. And so my feeling, and he's doing much better now, and my feeling was that why wait until you're 50 or 30 or 20 for that matter? And why not have kids start to learn how to identify what they perceive as good quality characteristics that you'd want to have in themselves and those that they'd want to surround themselves with. And so when we're talking 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and their families, those could be, age-appropriate, simple little things like, telling the truth and, having your friends back, whatever the situation may be. And this is both positively and negatively, because at that age, most things that come up are positive things. And so having someone to share those things with is what it's all about. And so in comes your little, as you observe these things in other people and you begin to kind of act those things out, what they look like, then you start to identify, well, how would I actually approach someone like that? And then start to, over time, build your little home team, right? So it doesn't have to be a ton of people. It could be 2, 3, 5, 4 people. It doesn't matter. It could be a coach, a parent. It could be a fellow classmate, a friend. It could be someone a little older than you that kind of has that little mentoring gene in them. And that's, as you go up through high school, then if you carry this out over time, you start at 9 years old. Well, reaching out to other people is something you've done by the time you graduate high school for more than half your life. And when it comes to things like bullying and cyberbullying or whatever, let's say you have a group of, I don't know, 8, 10 kids, right? And these are once a week workshops. And when you start to talk about qualities, who's going to raise their hand and go, I love the way this kid and a group of his friends just bullied my little friend? No one's going to say that, right? So the qualities you're going to aspire to are those, the ones that lift you and others up. And so when it comes to bullying and stuff like that, first of all, when it comes to anxiety and I'm thinking there's another word I'm looking for. It escapes right now, but anxiety, depression, things like that. Over time, you will avoid those altogether because you will be so in tune. Hopefully, you'll have earned your way onto someone else's, and the people that you choose, those will just be people like these workshops will be staged to talk about and act out things that happen, both good and bad. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to. And this book has actually gotten in the way of this program, of me not developing the program, but me getting it packaged up to present. And so when I say in a good way, I mean, when I say it gotten in the way, I mean kind of in a good way. We should have been doing this already, like back in August. So, but that's okay, because we've got a little time on our hands.
Well, let me shift right to the book then, which is mentioned. And I want to ask you about writing with William Croyle.
Yeah.
Why was he the fit for the ultimate comeback for you to tell your story?
Well, this goes back to a gentleman with the Detroit Lions, Bill Keenest, who was their public media relations director. And Bill reached out to a friend of his, Dan Wetzel, who wrote for Yahoo Sports. And Dan wrote an article, and William Croyle, read it a number of times, and actually Anna Durgan at the time was quoted in it more than I was. And so he found out how to get in touch with her, and it was Bill Croyle that reached out to her. And, I've never met him. And so it took us a while to get to know each other. And he's written several books, and I want to say 10, 12 books. And so he writes these kind of personal interest type books. And the one I ended up reading of his was called Angel in the Rubble. It was written about the woman she was the last survivor of the 9/11 attacks. Right. And, you could tell within a couple of paragraphs, obviously he knows what he's doing. But he has a way of crafting out, and that to me is very special. And there's so much to this book, I think, that will resonate with a lot of people. And part of it is about depression and my experience with it. Part of it is about a suicide attempt that I actually did make, and thankfully was not successful in. And the recovery of that to where I am today is very interesting. And then, because I don't remember most of it, right. And at least the initial couple years, 2-3 years. And then, but there's a lot of, interesting stuff, not a ton of football, but there's relationships with my parents, me growing up, and a little bit of how they grew up, and then with my own two sons.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just, it's funny because when you want to call them girl, because we went to high school together, I went to two different high schools. And so one woman, Angie Gannum, she read it. She goes, "Oh, love the book, but I didn't really like the football," which there was like 10 pages of.
But that's the thing I was going to ask you. That's why I brought up William Croyle, because I'm sure, our podcast focuses on sports books, and we've done tons of them. And we know the business behind that is, I'm sure you were approached by sports publishers that wanted to tell your story from a sports angle. Had that been pitched to you before you decided, hey, I want to go to William Croyle or Bill?
No, it hadn't been, but it was something that I had thought about years ago myself. And I had called Mitch Albom. This is back before he wrote Tuesdays with Maury and all that. And so, because Mitch still is, I think he still writes. I know he's got a radio show there in Detroit. But anyway, so just the story itself, if you take away everything that happened the last 10 years, to me, that story is a story worth telling.
Right.
And part of that is actually in there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah,
because I
Yeah.
really did come from the bottom of the barrel, like the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed, undrafted, but something that was striking to me, Eric, after reading the book, and then I'm watching a week ago during the college football championship, and ESPN is showing Michigan's team sports psychologist on the sideline, and they're talking about the quarterback, J.B. McCarthy. He brushes his teeth with a different hand to open up neural pathways. How maybe refreshing is it to see that kind of openness to talking about the mental game nowadays, and how far is it removed from what it was like 30 some years ago when you were playing?
Well, it was altogether not there. And so there was none of that, what you see today, which it makes me very happy to see that. And so that's something that Kevin Wildenhouse, who I worked with for many years, he's retired now, although he's, as it goes, probably more busy now than he was before. And it's all sports related. So he works with a lot of teams, athletes, professional athletes, I guess, and others. And but I keep putting that bug in his ear that that's something we should do. And but I love it. I love the fact that that's become, to me, more the norm now, because for me, here's what Kevin Wildenhouse was for me.
Right.
No matter how hard I trained, stretching, running, lifting, watching video. Okay, none of that mattered until he became the glove that all those fingers fit into. And it was just a way of slowing down what I was doing mentally, emotionally, and being able to kind of see the game before it ever even happens, see a play before it happens. And don't even give the play in the huddle until you have sort of gone through briefly what's going to happen. And it's a way of, with your breathing and guided imagery, where you kind of put yourself with some help into this place where it's actually not a football stadium. For me, it was floating down a river on a raft.
Yeah. Keep coming back to your phrase there, be like water.
Yeah. And so, you would like to play a game or go through life fluidly, right? You don't want a lot of herky-jerky stops and starts. And so that's what it became. And so that way it didn't matter, when it came to football, it didn't matter where we were playing or who we were playing or what a team's name, colors were, didn't matter. And playoff game, regular game, practice, none of it mattered. And meaning the significance of it wouldn't kind of rain down on you. You know what I mean? You wouldn't notice that. You would notice, hey, this is how I breathe. This is how I process the play coming in. This is what I look for. And this is how I operate. And that's really, that's as complicated as it gets. In fact, it kind of takes the complication out of it.
Yeah, it was interesting because what I was going to ask you is was my next question is the first time you got to talk to him and kind of tell him how you were feeling. I mean, what was that process like for telling someone for the first time, hey, I'm not okay?
Well, here's what it was. It wasn't that I wasn't okay. It was that I couldn't concentrate during practice to slow things down to do what I wanted to do. Like I had this image in my head. This is how I throw the ball. Well, I wasn't doing that. And this is how I read coverages. Well, I wasn't doing that. And so I think it just really it's not complicated. And it's really just, they've talked about how J.J. McCarthy, is breathing his way through whatever underneath the goalpost, sitting cross-legged, and looking more like Rafiki from, Lion King than, getting ready to go out and play a college football game. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's it. That's what it's all about. It's the way and ways that you, ultimately, anything that's negative thoughts, meaning anything you feel bad about yourself, that doesn't belong in there either. And so part of it is the psychology of how you feel about yourself and how you actually judge yourself, and maybe not going forward. And so, it's just, it's more of a, you're not going to solve this riddle today or even tomorrow, but you're going to solve it over time. Meaning, if I don't know that solve is maybe the right word, but
Right.
You're going to kind of elevate your sense of how you move about and process what's going on, so that there's no rigidity to it, basically.
Right. Yeah, because you mentioned the techniques you learn, and listening to the tapes of your own voice, and it's actually interesting because at the end of the book, it's an interesting perspective, and you've touched on it already, so I won't get into it. Maybe I'll just mention it, but you're right. One way to collectively beat depression is to give each other hope, look out for one another, and care for one another. And you talk about just a phone call and a text, but it's interesting because the brain is just it's such an interesting and wild place.
It is. What I found is it's amazing how much you reaching out, like me, reaching out to someone else to do whatever. It doesn't matter. Like any act at all to brighten up someone else's day means nothing. It takes no effort. But yet, how much it could help or lift someone up just for a minute, which could make the difference in their day being positive or negative.
Did that happen to you, especially towards the end, like before August 15th? Did you find there were times in that period where someone might have just said something to you that changed you for the better?
Well, how do I say this? No, it's not that they didn't. It's that there came a time when, let's just go back to say, I don't know, let's say maybe November, December, January of that year. Say November 2014 up through August, whatever it was, 15 or something, or August 18th, I guess it was 2015, when I actually pulled the trigger and tried to shoot myself, or did shoot myself, tried to end it, but didn't. And I think when you go down the path that I was on, I had begun isolating myself so that I really couldn't gain anyone's perspective, nor did I want it. And it was like everything felt bad. If you were my two best friends on earth, it would be hard for me to sit here and talk to you. But if you weren't here, it would be depressing that you weren't here.
Right.
And if you did ask me how things were going, I would say they're going awesome. Couldn't be better.
Wow.
When couldn't be further from the truth. And I think when you get far enough down that depression hole, there's nothing like moving forward doesn't feel good. Moving backward doesn't feel good. Nothing tastes good. There's hope, you mentioned. There isn't any. And you kind of suffer in your own silence. In the walls that you build, you suffer in there. Even though there really aren't any.
Right.
Yeah, this definitely hits home, having gone through it. And I guess one thing that did seem to run through the book and maybe your life, Eric, and this is just me applying it from the outside, but it was the concept of forgiveness. How did you work through that after the loss of your son, and at the same time, how does someone earn forgiveness from you? I guess.
Forgiveness. That's a very good question, because in my way of thinking, in my point of view, forgiveness isn't earned. Forgiveness is what's given, and it's there. You never earn it, and it's never something you have to even speak. It's something that you give forgiveness from the inside, and it's a way of washing yourself from the burden that whatever you're carrying around. So why would you carry around something you're going to hold against somebody else? Because it's never going to end. You're never going to get what you want out of it, which is, I don't even know what that is. But I remember in Griffin's case, so Griffin died of a heroin overdose. Mm-hmm. And he had been through treatment. He had been through inpatient program, outpatient. He was back in school. And so he had a relapse. And it's in the book what I found out. And there was a kid there who, the day that I was sitting in this person's house, and this kid was basically telling me everything he didn't do, which I just found out my son was dead. And I was waiting to go into the room to see him. And months later, the detective calls me and says, not only was he there, he was actually the person that shot Griffin, or shot him up, because Griffin didn't like needles. So he shot Griffin up in his toes. And then when Griffin had an immediate reaction to it, which was basically a seizure-like reaction, eyes roll back in the head, foaming at the mouth, this kid got in his car and started driving around, wondering, what should I do? Then started calling people. Everybody told him to take him to the hospital. Guess what he did? He drove back to his house. Now, by now, Griffin would have been dead or near dead. So he had to drag him out of his car, drag him into the house, set him down, face up, go back out to another party. So, am I going to carry that around? No. So I look at that kid as, I think he was 17 or 18 at the time, incapable. That's what I looked at it.
And he saved, and you talk about Griffin essentially saving some kids too that were pulled out of like homes, right? That could have been, they were basically, because of these raids that happened after this was.
Yeah, I guess that happened. Like I honestly, frankly, because Griffin wasn't coming back, I couldn't care less what happened after that. Right. And so this book to me is my way. You mentioned, for how'd this book get written? Well, Bill Croyle reached out to me. Eventually we formed something of a phone relationship. I've still never seen him face to face. And what was I going to say? It was both for Griffin and Dylan. Dylan's my younger son. And then the idea that as this book came together, I could see this was going to help some folks. That's basically what's been happening. And the reactions that I've been seeing, hearing from friends, from people that have known me for a long, long time, or people that haven't known me even a second. The reaction is visceral of this book. It's not a depressing book in any way. And it's just a very, I would say, sort of an encompassing read about someone's life that most likely many, many other people will have either lived and experienced themselves or know someone who did.
Yeah, I mean, like I told Nate, I mean, it's I mean, Nate, I think you probably relate to this book in a pretty profound way. I certainly learned a lot. And one of the things I found interesting in it was, and this is a bit of a pivot, so forgive me, but the origins of you growing up in California and how you kind of were pushed to play football. So could you delve into that a little bit? Like, was there, an athletic gene in your family that your dad knew about, that he knew, hey, my son, if I really push him, might be able to play some sort of professional game, whether it's
right. Well, I think in my dad's mind, That was always in his mind.
Right.
The athletic genes, it's not that he wasn't a good athlete. I think he played high school tennis, and so he was a good tennis player. And my mom was really more the athlete.
Right.
And but my dad had a very patient way about him when it came to working with other kids, not just me. He just loved working with other kids, any kids. And so, I think that's where I got my start. And then from there, like he definitely gave me a belief in myself for sure. There's no way I would have had one without that. But it was also, there was a flip side to that. And as I got older, it was really hard for me to listen to and perform something that someone demanded I do. There's a difference between offering up what you know in a way that, hey, here's something you might try, as opposed to, if you don't do it this way, I am going to go crazy. Right. Meaning, and I'm going to make life very difficult on you. Fine line between believing in someone and fostering the belief in themselves, and programming them in a way in which they don't get a chance, or they don't get any options other than what you put out there for them. And so as time grew older, yes, and as I got older, I got tired of that approach. And I had some very I would say difficult conversations for me to have with him. And difficult in a way where, no 13, 14, 15-year-old should be having those boundary type of discussions with their parents. It should be, in fact, just the opposite, but it wasn't. And so that was very difficult during that phase. But at the same time, as I've gotten older, I can see that we all come from somewhere, right? And so his upbringing, nobody would want that. My mom's upbringing, I'm not sure how many people would have wanted that one either. And I think has allowed me over time to kind of process who they were through a different lens, as like a more mature one is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And in the book, I mean, you come kind of full circle. You describe them very matter-of-factly, but also at the end, you come and kind of reconcile with each of them in your own way. And what I found really interesting, and it kind of ties into our current times, is how you describe your mom as, first of all, that's where you got if there is an athletic gene, you got it from your mom. Your dad may have driven you, but your mom was the athlete. And she's described as being hyper competitive. I mean, almost like, we hear about like guys like Michael Jordan now. And, right. and I sometimes wonder, I mean, we kind of like venerate that in a way, like, you got to just bear down and win at all costs. But what does that have that mindset have on everybody else in our society, when you're on the other side of that?
Right. I guess that's one thing that, looking back, I guess you'd want to have, right? You wouldn't want to have just, I have to win at all costs, meaning at your cost too. Right. But because in most instances, you're going to be playing against your own friends. And so the idea is that you all have a good time. But my mom was, again, here, at least from my angle, she, and this is back again, when I was young, she was ultra competitive, meaning she didn't care who you were. She was going to she was going to win and make you feel that she won. And, but I think also as she got older, that part of her mellowed quite a bit.
Go ahead, Nate.
And in terms of developing and expanding perspective, we have to ask, since we are in Canada, about your time in the CFL when you were with the Calgary Stampeders. How did exposure to a different country and I guess a slightly different form of football affect your outlook at that stage?
Well, I honestly, I was grateful for the opportunity, and you're right, it was a different brand of football, and we had, I mean, even though it's 12 on 12, Larry Kuharich, who I think now has passed away, was the head coach, and he was the offensive coach, and so. He tried to keep it as much like his brother, Bill Kuharich, was the pro personnel director at the Saints when I was there. And so he tried to keep it sort of in line with most of those, at least the passing game part, most of those concepts. And so it wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing, but it did mess around a little bit with what at least I knew for the most part. So I can't say that I excelled all that well. There was a game, like when I got there, the first year was 1988. And so I got there was only 6 games left in the season. And so I played in that first game like the whole second half, and then I started every game after that. So like I said, we had some success as I recall, but overwhelmingly we were not a good team. I don't even know what our record was. And there was a game in Saskatchewan we played there. I think it was there where I think I threw 6 interceptions in one game. So, and then the following year, I came back and had some good friends on the team, and came back, and we had an inter squad scrimmage before the season even began. And Larry it was his idea to make it live on the quarterbacks. So three or so plays in, and this wasn't the defensive end's fault, but he got kind of clipped into my knee by the offensive lineman, and so I tore a PCL and was done for the year. So I in a season and a third, I played 6 games, and so I knew I didn't have a contract going back. In fact, that second year, I think Jeff Tedford was the quarterbacks coach because he had come up. He had played there before, and I think Freddie Blitnikoff was the receiver coach. And anyway, so I remember not being allowed to even come to the meetings at some point in the season, which is like ridiculous. Like, did I cause this? You caused it. How did I? Whatever. So anyway. That was it. That was my experience. So, I learned how to fly fish, made some great friends that I still stay in contact with today. Obviously, one of them, Tim Petros, passed away several years ago. But anyway, yeah, for me, for the most part, it was a good experience. And I love being people there are awesome. People on the team, people in the town. So, it was fun.
Yeah, Tim Petros was a running back, and I believe still holds the record for most rushing yards in the Vanier Cup, which is Canada's university football championship. 260 in 1983 against Queens. Don't ask why we know that. But I wanted to ask, too, how should one who watches the NFL now appreciate the impact from the coaches who gave you your shot in Detroit, Mouse Davis and June Jones, who also, of course, were in Canada.
Right. No, I loved my time there. Mouse and June were great. Learned a lot from both of them, and I really loved June. Even though June was a receiver coach, he did offer up quite a bit of stuff for quarterbacks too, and I just love both of their kind of very mild-mannered, easygoing. They were teachers, and so I love that. And anytime you're either teaching or learning, something good is usually going on. And even though both of them I got there in 1990. I believe they were there in 89, and that was their first year. So they got, of course, fired after the only year I was there with them. And but yeah, they were, it's a good story how I ended up going there, which is in the book too. But
the cold call.
Yeah, right. Not many people, I guarantee you, are end up playing in the NFL just because you cold call a team. So, yeah, they flew me out there, and the Lions, I mean, and I go sit in Mouse Davis's office, which was a conference room, and he comes walking in. He's like, "Who are you?" It's like, "Well, you guys flew me in here for a workout." And he was like, "Huh. Okay." So he walks out, comes back in. He says, "Well, they got the turf in the Silverdome rolled up for whatever heck was going on. No one was even there to throw passes to anyway." And I think this is probably January or something. And he goes, "Hey, how about we get in my car and you and June and I will drive over to Ann Arbor and you can throw him passes." So I was like, "All right, great." So I was dropping back and June would stand wherever he stood. And that was my workout. So, there was no receivers involved. There was nothing. And, it turns out it was a run and shoot, which I knew nothing about. And but you kind of learn over time, how to, because back then it was all like there were no drop backs. It was all kind of a rollout. Everything was thrown on the run, or you pull up and throw to the backside somewhere. But I didn't play that year. I played the next year. And I think the offense changed a little bit.
You led the Lions to within. Sorry, go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, how much trace sort of the principles of the run and shoot? How much do you still see that in the NFL? Receivers change their route based on the defense, and the quarterback's got to get
it's out there quite a bit. Yeah, I'm not as big a fan of it as I mean, there are some concepts that are you see them there today, but there's also my preference is the West Coast passing game. That's what we ran in Chicago when I was there, and but the run and shoot has some really good elements to it as well, especially when it was the old high school hash marks, which have now they're now college. High school is now college hash marks, and pro, it's actually works against a run and shoot because it's so condensed. Whereas if you have a really wide side of the field and you put three receivers to the boundary and one receiver to the wide side, that guy's got a problem. The cornerback, I mean. and so it's a bit different. But like I said, I'm more a fan of the West Coast passing game just because you still have options. It's just they're not the same ones. And your technique for how you beat certain man coverages is altogether different. And so I think it gives you a vast array of options in which you can any zone defense, doesn't matter. You have all kinds of ways to use the receivers around the one you want to throw to widen that guy. So you're either going to freeze the defender. There's always a key defender somewhere. You're either going to freeze him where he's at and throw opposite him, or you're going to move him where he's already going and throw it some way around him. So it's a good offense.
We got.
In fact, you can't watch the NFL today without watching the West Coast passing game.
Yeah, Bill Walsh, of course.
Yeah. Right.
Can we travel back just a bit in the final couple of questions here? And you led the Lions to within a game of the Super Bowl. That would have been the Super Bowl in 1992. It was the 1991 season. You hold the Chicago Bears record for passing yards and TDs in the season in 1995. Is there something you feel? I mean, if we're to look at those two, and they might not be, but those two, I guess, happenstances as the highlights of some of the highlights of your career, what went right internally and externally for you those years? Because I think it's kind of a combination of both when everything kind of fits together, right?
Yeah, I think just over time, you get to learn quite a bit. And I think what we ran in Chicago was so much different than what we did in Detroit. Although in '93, we also had a pretty good year. We won the division, but we lost in the wild card round to Green Bay, who we'd already beat the week before. And I think I played the last 4 or 5 games, and Dave Levy was the offensive coordinator, like he was in '91. And so Dave was really good about allowing me to bring him ideas on what passes to make. And so as it turned out, a few of the route concepts I brought him were basically a couple basic run and shoot, West Coast passing game plays.
Right.
And so I didn't learn that until I went to Chicago. So anyway, that's kind of how my transition to Chicago, it was not smooth, but it became much smoother that second year when I learned a whole lot, really from watching and from continuing to study. But anyway, that's I think the more you're around this game and the more different ideas you are around and what's presented, there's so much more to learn out there.
Was the mental state at that time? How were you feeling mentally at that time when things were going right on the field?
Never better. Okay. And so because again, I was back working with Kevin Wildenhouse again, even though he still lived in Plymouth, Michigan, just like he does now.
Yeah.
But we would talk over the phone quite a bit. I'd fly him out to a few games. He'd make these cassette recordings of him talking, doing the same thing. And so, those are things I would listen to, typically nightly, for sure, night before a game while I'm stretching in the hotel room. And so, I was just, my state of mind was very good because I felt like I really knew what I was doing. And I felt like the people around me did as well.
Nate may have a couple more questions, but we'll I know you've given us a lot of time, and I appreciate it because I know you just got off a flight and you were in Detroit yesterday, so you must be tired. But I'll keep this one strictly. We are journalists, myself and Nate, but we're also fans, and I'm a football fan, and I'm a Chicago Bears fan. So I have to ask you, there's kind of this thing about the Chicago Bears and the quarterback position. I don't know. I should probably have a better word than describing it as a thing, but I'd say a weight. Were you aware that there was a weight behind this position, that fans were kind of, it's all defense there and running at that point? Were you aware that they're kind of looking for the next Sid Luck to appear? Like, what was that like when you signed? Did you feel any pressure being the Chicago Bears quarterback?
Not for that reason, no. But to be able to perform at a high level, I did feel that. And why that particular organization and franchise has had such a difficult time over many, many years of finding somebody that can play consistently well, I don't know the answer to that. But I think that they've taken certain chances, or they've drafted, it's not like they haven't invested in draft picks or free agents or whoever to play, but they've never found the one right guy. And I don't know why that is, but I think they will. And I think, so if you're asking me what I would do, and you haven't yet, but I'm going to act as if you have. Okay. So if I was Ryan Poles today, knowing that I've got not only the number 1 draft pick, what used to belong to the Carolina Panthers, but your own. And knowing that now there's 2-3 teams right behind that all need a quarterback. So if Caleb Williams is that guy, he better be that guy. Because if he's not, there's a few behind him that really, with the right mix of people around him, could be. So if you traded back once, you can trade back again and again. and you could end up with 2 or 3 more first-round draft picks and still get a quarterback you want. So who wouldn't want to go into the season with a new, like, Laramie Tunsil or Trent Williams at left tackle, already forget his name, but the right tackle is legit out of Tennessee. He just finished off his rookie year. Get another edge rusher to go alongside Montez Sweat. Okay. And you still haven't drafted a quarterback yet. Okay. You got all that. And now you go name one. I don't care. I mean,
go ahead, Nate.
Bo Nix, there's who knows? I mean, heck, Caleb Williams hadn't even declared for the draft yet. And so to me, you could do a lot of damage before you ever even draft a quarterback in this draft. That doesn't even take into consideration what happens before the draft, which is free agency. Doesn't even take into account all the cap hits that are kind of hanging around out there, like what they did to get Montez Sweat. So, and they still have the most cap space in the NFL. So I think what we're seeing out of the Lions this year, next year will be the Chicago Bears. I hope that makes you feel better, Neil, because I know that's what I think is going to happen.
I appreciate it. Go ahead, Nate. Close it out.
Yeah, well, my heart's sinking. I'm a Vikings fan, right? I guess we're going to have to tank finally. I did want to ask, though, Erik, your last season in the NFL, it was you and Jim Harbaugh were the Chargers quarterbacks.
That's right.
What inkling would you have ever had that he was going to go on to do what he's done as a coach?
None. And it wasn't just me. So nobody he's ever played, nobody that was ever a teammate of his, ever would have thought he'd be a head coach. But
really?
Obviously he is, and he's really good at what he does. So he's never lost. Name a place he's ever lost.
He hasn't.
There isn't one. So wherever he goes, if it's back to Michigan, super. If it's somewhere else, he's going to win there too. And so, I mean, the latest that I've heard is the Chargers are talking to him, which I think that would be where it wouldn't be a great fit. So,
yeah. But there must have been something, though, like just in terms of how he was, organized, or was there anything that said that this guy is
I can't say.
dialed
I didn't
in?
know him. I didn't know him that well, but like we were roommates in training camp, and but it's not like he ever taught football, and it's not like in quarterback meetings he was like a plethora of ideas. He wasn't, and so he kind of sat back and whatever was like presented, good enough. And so,
Nate, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, perhaps there's something to that. He wasn't all, just focused. Because, I mean, I think I heard something saying, the coach can know everything, but if they can't get people to believe in them, then it doesn't really matter.
Right. I think there's a lot to be said for a guy that can lead people, not just players, the coaches as well, and whoever's above him. And so I think being able to galvanize a group of people, and, you can always get an offensive and a defensive coordinator, but the way it gets presented and the attitude with which the people take, not only present it, but the way the people that are players go out and execute it, that whole mentality that you pull together, that is Jim Harbaugh. That is whatever head coach is there. And so, for many years, you look at all the successful teams, they've got some sort of head coach that does exactly what I just mentioned.
Nice, yeah.
Erik, you sound really positive. You sound good. I hadn't really even watched any interviews from you in the past. I just read the book. Knew you as a quarterback with the Bears, and it's really encouraging and uplifting to talk to you. And you sound great.
Good. Well, thank you. If I sound great, it's because I feel great, and those two things go together. So I'm happy.
Well, thanks for sharing your time today with us, and we really appreciate your story, and we continue to follow your journey, and hope it continues to be encouraging for everyone else.
I appreciate that. Thank you, fellas. Good hanging out for a little bit with you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.